Hello, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Merry Chrysler.
What? Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. And welcome back to another episode of Twisted Talks. And today we are bringing you a Christmas
You've done what
special,
I did.
Which is?
The last time. You skipped the whole I'm Tanya.
I'm Tanya, by the way, in case you didn't know. If you're new, I'm Tanya.
I'm Josh.
Welcome. Merry Christmas. But yes, Christmas special. So Josh is going to be covering our Christmas case. And
then Tanya will do our New Year case.
I will do our New Year case.
Which will be the next one.
Yes.
After this one.
Which is very exciting.
So yes.
So Josh, anything you want to say?
For Christmas we would really like 5-star reviews.
Yes. Please. We've been great. We've been a really good boy and girl.
Okay.
I mean,
sure.
Technically.
Legally speaking.
Yes. No laws have been broken.
And if they were, we could not incriminate ourselves right here, but there have been no laws broken.
No, because we're a good boy and girl.
We are good gentle folk.
Yes.
Good calm folk.
Good calm folk. We don't break laws.
No. Not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. Not since before we turned legal.
You know, because that's when it's problematic.
It was all good fun then.
What laws have you broken if you've not been caught?
Exactly. And if any guards are listening to this, we've never broken laws.
Ever.
Ever. We're Catholics.
We've helped... Okay, let's not go that far. Anywho, right, I suppose I will... Why are the neighbours flashing their lights? Anyway.
Oh, it's a rave.
Ironically enough, that's the house that had the party in.
Really? Oh, it is, yeah.
The only yellow one on the street.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That was a good party.
That was a good
You
party.
threw a good party. The aftermath of the party
we won't
was
get
not
into
so
that.
good, but continue.
Anyhow, so, right, today I am obviously Christmas, so Christmas case. Unfortunately, unlike festivities, this is not very festive because it's
I'm
crime.
dissociating because you said anyhor and we say anyhor a lot, and my brain was just like, if we ever release merch, we should put anyhor.
On phone cases.
Yeah, but anyway, yes.
Oh my god, underwear. Anyhor.
So obviously, as Josh was saying, this is not going to be a very cheerful case.
Or any of them. But
Merry Christmas anyway.
So, Merry Christmas anyway. But, so, some of you might have heard of it. Some of you might be familiar. I think you said you have heard of it.
I have heard of it. I've watched a few videos on it.
Sodder Children Disappearance.
Mind-boggling case.
It is very, it's something.
Mm-hmm.
So, jumping straight in, after our prologue, epilogue.
Yeah, our epilogue.
Prologue.
Our 3-minute epilogue.
Introduction. So, late on Christmas Eve, going into Christmas Day 1945, in Fayetteville, West Virginia, George and Jennie Sodder and 9 of their 10 children went to bed to sleep like any other night. Now, the reason it was only 9 of their 10 children is because one of their sons, Joseph, was away at the time serving in the army. So this was not long after World War II had finished.
1945, you said, wasn't it?
Yeah. So by the time that this actually happened, World War II, the peace treaty had been signed and all that crack.
Okay.
But obviously, still a lot of...
There was a lot of aftermath.
Yeah, like with anything.
Still a lot of stuff happening,
you know. So the army and all were probably still quite busy, so their son was still away with the army. He was quite young. He was not long 18, so I don't know if he actually served properly in World War II or was just kind of dealing with the aftermath or whatever. There's mixed sources on that, so I've kind of left it out because there's a lot of conflicting sources. Yeah. I even got a trial in Ancestry to try and find the man's military history.
Records. Oh my god.
And I couldn't.
I wonder can you find...
I could find his kids.
I wonder can you find... Was it my granddad? Not my granddad, my great-granddad was in the military.
You probably could.
Oh.
Anyway, so, as I said, Joseph was away.
I say military? Sorry, army.
Yeah, I just said military because... I don't know why I said military either, actually. But anyway. So, after they were all asleep, bar Joseph, flocking around with the military, at around 1:30 a.m. that night, a fire broke out. George, Jennie and 4 of their 9 children managed to get out of the house, but the other 5 children were never seen again. Even the bodies of these 5 children were never found.
Mm-hmm. And I would just like to jump in and say, typically, house fires do not burn hot enough to incinerate a body.
Like I even have the stats on that further down.
Oh, fantastic.
So, because there was actually someone who spoke to the family about it.
I know that was one of the theories that I know I'm getting ahead of myself here.
Yeah, you're getting ahead of the case. You're ruining my case.
I'm sorry. I'll shut up. I'll keep my
mouth
shut.
I'm going to pee on you.
Ew, that's disgusting.
Actually, that reminds me.
Oh, God.
I'm going to pause for a second because I don't want to make Tanya have to tell a story.
Oh, God.
So bear with. And we're back with a lovely Tinder story.
It's not Tinder, but Josh he said he didn't want to make me tell the story, but I'm going to tell the story anyway because I think it's funny. So when I was in college, I was friends with this girl, and she, I don't know, was it I gave her a gift or something, but she posted something on her story and tagged me, and you know how when you tag someone on Snapchat,
it was on Snapchat.
Their Snapchat name comes up.
That's even worse.
Right? And of course I was maybe 18. Yeah, I was 18. I was 18 at the time. So back then, like, you know, you accept like every friend request and whatever. So this guy added me. And before I accepted him, I had asked her, like, do you know this guy? Like, he's not a fucking freak or anything, is he? And she was like, no, like, I went to school with him. He's normal. Don't worry about it. So we were kind of talking. General, normal conversation.
Thinking, oh, okay.
And then all of a sudden, he just turned around and was like, would you piss on me? I said, no, absolutely not. He said, can I piss on you? I said, no, absolutely not. And I blocked him. I think hang on, I think he's actually still in my blocked list on Snapchat. Like, did I delete it?
We're not kink shaming, you know, if that's what you're into, you do with that.
It's not my thing.
It's not really something you just bring up randomly in a normal conversation.
How do I check? It's down here somewhere.
I actually don't even remember how to check.
Here. That's him. I did block him. That's him. And then that's a totally different guy.
I love the bracket.
Yep.
But anyway.
So that's the story of how a guy with a piss kink came onto me.
And just to clarify, me threatening Tanya by peeing on her was just a joke. I do not have a piss kink. And if I did, it would be with men. But I don't. So, just to clarify on that one.
You're very defensive about that, Josh. Suspiciously defensive.
Suspiciously. I have many kinks, trust me, but that's not one of them.
That is suspicious.
Suspicious. I am suspicious.
As Kiki Roche would say, suspicious.
Suspicious.
But anyway,
moving on.
Yeah, sorry
with
about
the suspicious case. Oh yes.
I love how we're so chaotic.
Stop.
We record.
There's nothing.
I don't know how we have any listeners, to be honest.
Probably it's the chaos.
Yeah.
So, the children that got safely out of the house were 23-year-old John, 16-year-old. Well, he's not really a child, is he? But you know. He's one of their children. 23-year-old John, 16-year-old George Jr., 17-year-old Marion, and 2-year-old Sylvia. The children who were lost were 14-year-old Maurice, 9-year-old Louis, 12-year-old Martha, 8-year-old Jennie, and 5-year-old Betty. So Jennie was the mother, but Jennie was also one of the daughters' names.
So they had a son named after the dad and a daughter named after the mom.
Yeah, but George was at least called George Jr. Jennie's just Jennie.
Jennie.
So all that was left of the house was a basement full of ashes from the fire. The family never rebuilt the house. Instead, they made the site into a memorial garden for their lost children. Oh. So that was nice. Jennie Sodder, so Mother Jennie, took care of the garden for the rest of her life, even though she had started to believe that her children might actually still be out there alive. Now, the Sodders were not satisfied with what officials had determined about the fire and began to question all official findings. There were a lot of unanswered questions as well as strange circumstances before and during the blaze. Now, we'll get more into all that later, but for now I'm going to jump into like a bit of background and stuff first, as every case needs.
I am interested to see if you have anything that I haven't
heard
to do
other
with this
things
case.
Yet. Yeah. There was actually so much more information on this case than I was expecting to be able to find. It was so easy to find information. Yeah. But anyway, George, the dad, was actually Giorgio Sodder, but everyone called him George. Mm-hmm. He moved from Sardinia, Italy, to the United States in 1908. An older brother of his travelled with him, but returned to Italy straight after accompanying George as far as Ellis Island, so I guess he was just kind of chauffeuring him.
Yeah, just making sure he didn't get lost all the way.
Yeah, because he was 13 at the time.
Stop!
Yeah. Just to show how young people immigrated and moved off and started on their own, 13 years old.
Crazy.
George soon started working in Pennsylvania on the railroads. He would carry water and supplies to the workers, things like that. Mm-hmm. A few years later, George moved to Smithers in West Virginia, where he worked as a driver. Smithers. It just makes me think of Simpsons.
Smithers.
Where he worked as a driver first, before starting his own trucking, or I suppose you could call it hauling company as well. Mm-hmm. George then met Jennie Cipriani. the daughter of a store owner, also in Smithers, who had moved to the United States from Italy when she was 3. George and Jennie got married, and between the years of 1923 and 1943 had their 10 children. They settled in Fayetteville, also in West Virginia, an Appalachian town with a small but active Italian immigrant community, so at least, there was other Italians there.
Yeah. Kind of their culture was there.
Exactly,
kind of,
at least there was some people that
Felt
they
a bit
could
more
use
like
their own
home, I
language with,
suppose,
whatnot. They moved into a 2-storey wood-framed house that was located about 2 miles.
So that's why it was only ashes left.
But as far as I know, I think a lot of houses in America are wooden framed.
They are.
They're not built the same as we do.
We've actually mentioned this on the podcast before.
We definitely have, yeah.
Because
I was thinking it was from easier to replace from natural disasters and stuff.
Because I was thinking, I always thought growing up how strange it was that their houses were made of like wood and plaster and things, and like, because I always thought that like
Make
the way
a stronger
we
house.
built houses would be stronger.
Yeah.
But I suppose it is much more expensive to rebuild.
Yeah, exactly. Because to be fair, if we got a wickedly bad tornado, I still don't think our houses would tolerate it.
Yeah, but like...
Lidl and Clonmel didn't tolerate Storm Ophelia.
Yeah.
And that's nothing compared to a proper tornado or hurricane.
I don't know why I thought that was the one with the digger. That was in Aldi, wasn't it?
No, that was in... It was either Aldi or Lidl, but it was up near Dublin somewhere.
Was it in... Not
Tallow. No, not Tallow. Yeah, it is Tallow, isn't it?
I think.
Yeah, but Tala, that's
Tala,
it.
yeah.
But I don't even think that was just to do with the storm and people actually got a digger and burst into it.
Yeah, they did. That was fully someone stole a JCB and was like boom, and then people just looted it. I think.
They wanted bread, I guess.
Yeah, we had a bread shortage, toilet roll shortage.
And we only had a bread shortage because people panicked about the bread.
My dad was stuck on the toilet. I had no choice. He needed the toilet roll.
The bog roll. So yes, moved into a 2-storey frame wooden house, and it was located about 2 miles or 3.2 kilometres north of the actual town of Fayetteville. So not quite in the town, but very close. You could walk that easily, like.
Yeah.
George's hauling business thrived, and according to county magistrate, the Sodders became, quote, one of the most respected middle-class families around, unquote, or end quote. George was a very direct man with strong opinions that would often isolate or drive away some people. He had a strong opposition to Benito Mussolini, the Italian dictator. This opinion had been the root of disagreements with other members of the Italian immigrant community in Fayetteville and left some of them with a bit of animosity toward George. So he had some kind of, I suppose, what you could call enemies because of his opinions on Mussolini.
Yeah.
So Sylvia Sodder, so the youngest of the Sodder children, was born in March of 1942, and by this time the second eldest son of George and Jennie, Joseph, also known as Joe, was supposedly serving in the military by this time. This would have been, like I said, time of World War II.
Yep.
The following year, 1943, Mussolini was deposed by King Victor Emmanuel III and was then executed on the 28th of April 1945 by strong supporters of the Italian Communist Party. As you can imagine, other Italian immigrants in Fayetteville who did not share the opinions of George Sodder, who openly opposed Mussolini, may not have been very happy with him and his opinions during the times of Mussolini's deposition and later execution.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Also, guys, I hope you enjoy the sounds of rain.
Yeah, I'm assuming the microphone is picking it up, but
probably.
it's more calming than the dogs drinking water in the background.
It is, or Jack barking like a seal.
Yeah, because I think he might be a seal. So then, moving on to kind of the lead up to the fire. So in October of 1945, only months before the fire, a life insurance salesman visiting the area attempted to sell the Sodders a life insurance policy. George did not want to take out a policy, and the salesman got very angry and warned George that, quote, his house would go up in smoke and your children are going to be destroyed. The salesman claimed that this was due to, quote, the dirty remarks you have been making about Mussolini, unquote.
Suspicious.
Yes. Now, due to George being outspoken about his dislike of Mussolini and the arguments he had with others regarding the topic, he didn't pay much attention to the salesman's threats because,
he was
another day in the life.
Yeah.
Now, the date is unclear, but also sometime in autumn or fall, depending on what you want to call it, of 1945. But wait, actually, as well, bear in mind that's American seasons.
Yes.
Because different areas have slightly different months for the seasons, don't they? So, but yeah, of 1945, a stranger came to the house asking about work, seeing as George had his own company.
Yeah.
The stranger made his way to the back of the house and pointed to 2 separate fuse boxes and said, quote, "This is going to cause a fire someday," unquote. George found this comment strange, as he had not long had the wiring checked by the local power company, who said it was in fine condition.
Again.
Suspicious. The older sons of George and Jennie also recalled something strange. They said that just before Christmas they had spotted a man parked along US Highway 21, closely watching the younger children as they came home from school.
That's
once again
fucking weird.
Weird. Very weird. Now, on Christmas Eve, so the night of, leading up to, on Christmas Eve, Marion Sodder, who was 17, gave her siblings toys that she had gotten from the dime store that she worked at. 5 of the children, Martha, 12, Jennie, 8, Betty, 6, Maurice, 14, and Louis, 10, obviously didn't want to go to bed because they got their new toys.
And it was Christmas.
So they pleaded with their mother, to let them stay up for longer so they could play with their new toys. And it was around 10 p.m. already at this point. And Mama Jennie told them they could stay up longer as long as Louis and Maurice remembered to feed the cows and close the chicken coop before they went to bed.
Mm-hmm. So you gotta do your chores.
Exactly. Apologies about the rain deciding to pick up a storm there for a second at the end. We stopped for a minute.
Yeah, we had to take a little break.
Yeah, and readjust the microphones.
Yeah, well, we're just using one microphone now, so we'll see how it goes.
Fingers crossed, the rain has calmed now,
Hopefully
so we're going to
won't
continue.
Start again until we're finished.
Yes, because we're not nearly there, but,
but
we're not nearly there. But
here we go.
Okay, so as we were saying, that feed the cows and close the chicken coop before they went to bed.
Because you got to do your chores.
You got to do your chores.
Yes, very
And
important.
as I said, exactly. So the older sons in the house, John, 23, and George Jr., 16, had already gone to bed for the night. They slept in the attic, so I'm assuming it was converted.
Probably.
George Sodder had also gone to bed early, so Daddy George. That sounds so inappropriate, but anyway, that's not what I meant.
Let's go Papa George.
Pappy, sorry.
Oh,
okay,
Pappy.
Anyway. So he'd gone to bed early that night as well. Jennie said goodnight to her children and picked up 2-year-old Sylvia and took her to bed with her. That night, going into Christmas morning at around 12:30, the telephone rang. Jennie Sodder woke, Mama Jennie, and quickly got to the phone to answer it. Jennie didn't recognise the voice of the woman who had called, and the woman was asking for an unfamiliar name. Jennie could hear that there was sharp laughter and glasses clinking on the other end. Jennie told the woman she had the wrong number and hung up. Quietly making her way back to bed, Jennie saw that all the lights downstairs were on, the curtains were still open, and the front door was still unlocked. Jennie saw Marion sleeping on the couch in the living room and assumed the other kids were upstairs in bed, so she turned off the lights, closed the curtains and locked the door before she went back to bed. Now, Jennie had just started to fall asleep when she heard a sudden bang on the roof, followed by a rolling sound. So, hearing nothing more, she went back to sleep, and between half an hour to an hour later, Jennie woke up again. However, this time it was because she could smell smoke. So, no bueno.
No bueno.
Now, Jennie got up and saw that one of the rooms, their office, was on fire. Jennie screamed for her husband to wake him. Jennie and George then shouted up to the attic where 2 of the sons were. Jennie went and woke Marion, who was still asleep on the downstairs couch, and told Marion to get Sylvia out of the house. Jennie went to the stairway, shouting to wake the rest of the family. Only George Jr. and John came down. John had yelled to the next room where the other children would normally be, and he thought he had heard them reply. George Jr. and John began to help their father, George, fight the fire, and Jennie, Marion and Sylvia waited helplessly outside, seeing the fire spread throughout their home. The flames surrounded the bottom of the stairway, making it impossible for anyone to go upstairs and check why the other children had not come down.
And also making it impossible for the other children to
come down if they're upstairs, that is. George Jr. and John ran outside. George, desperate to reach his other children through the upstairs windows. What am I on about? Sorry. He was desperate to reach the children, and the only way he could think of was through the upstairs windows.
Using the upstairs windows.
Yeah. So, however, the ladder that he had always had leaning up against the house was all of a sudden not there.
Weird.
Yeah, and that's where he always left it. So he came up with the idea, okay, I'm going to have to, drive one of my 2 coal trucks up to the house so he could climb onto the roof of them and reach for the windows.
Yeah.
And even though both coal trucks had worked perfectly fine the day before, not one of them would start.
Again.
Weird.
Very fucking weird.
George then tried to scoop water from a rain barrel, but the water was frozen solid. It's the height of winter. And there was no more they could do except watch the house burn.
Oh,
now, Marion
awful.
Sodder, little Marion, ran to a neighbour's house. Well, no, Marion wasn't little
She was
Marion, 17.
Yeah. But young Marion.
Young Marion, yes. Ran to a neighbour's house to call the Fayetteville Fire Department, but couldn't get through to, remember at the time, operators' switchboards.
Yeah.
But couldn't get through to an operator to connect the call. Because, as I said, at the time, calls were still required an operator to use a switchboard to direct the calls where they needed to go.
911 or to the fire station or to whatever you needed.
A neighbour who saw the inferno made a call from a tavern nearby, but they also couldn't get through to an operator. The neighbour drove into the town in search of the fire chief, and when the neighbour found Fire Chief F.J. Morris and told him what was going on, the fire chief set off Fayetteville's version of a fire alarm, which was a phone tree system, where one firefighter phoned another, who then phoned another, and so on until everyone was alerted.
So we'll say,
you phone me, I phone Dawn, Dawn phones Courtney.
Yeah, while I'm gone then.
And then we're all meet up at the fire truck or move on to the scene or whatever, I suppose, is applicable in the circumstance.
It's mad to think that, like, the 40s realistically weren't all that long ago.
No.
But at the same time, technologically...
Well, when you think about it, it was 80 years ago, actually.
Oh, yeah, I suppose, yeah. That's mad.
Because we're in the 2020s now, yeah.
Yeah, but even, like, how much technology has come out since,
it's a lot
crazy because,
in
like,
that period of time still.
By, like, the 70s, it was wildly different.
Yeah, like, leaps and bounds were made in very short periods of time.
Very short periods of time.
So yeah, they did their little system until everyone knew. Even though the fire department was only 2.5 miles away, the firefighting crew didn't arrive until between 7 and 9 a.m.
Oh my god.
The reports of the time of arrival vary, but somewhere between that. But at this stage, the Sodders' home was a pile of smoke and ash because the house had only taken around 45 minutes to completely burn down and collapse. Yeah. And remember, this started at around 1:30. So by 2:30, the place was nothing. The fire department was so late arriving due to being depleted from the war, and the fire chief admitted the next day he couldn't drive the fire truck and had to wait for someone who could.
The fire chief?
Yeah, I don't get that.
The chief of fire.
That's what I couldn't get either. I was like, of all
drive.
people, would the fire chief not have...
Could not drive the fire truck.
I just thought that was really
because I thought
strange.
you were going to say he couldn't drive it because he was after drinking or something.
Which would be fine because maybe you weren't on call, it just happened to happen and you were needed.
But, like, he physically did not know how to drive the fucking fire truck. The fire chief. The fire chief.
But then again, maybe then the fire chief was more so all about paperwork and telling everyone what to do and keeping control of stuff.
Maybe it wasn't a case of, like, him working up the ranks or something.
Because I know even now, I'm sure there's normally a specific person who's designated driving, but I'm pretty sure everyone has to know how to.
Yeah, in case of an emergency or in case something happens to that
person.
But,
like, there's normally one person or two people who normally do it, but everyone should have the knowledge, surely, or most people. Or at least more than one.
Fucking bizarre.
At least the chief. Anywho. At this point, the members of the Sodder family who had escaped the blaze could only assume that the other 5 members of their family had perished in the fire. George Jr. and John Sodder, as well as the firefighters and neighbours, searched for any sign of the 5 children, any sign that they had not escaped the house. At around 10 a.m, Fire Chief Morris told the Sodders that there were no remains of the children and that the fire must have completely consumed their bodies. It was later said that their search was cursory at best. It was said that because it was Christmas, a more thorough search would be conducted at a later date.
Are you fucking serious?
Priorities and all that, you know? That kind of shit pisses me off so much.
I'm sorry now, this family has
Fires don't wait
the mother
for Christmas
and father
to pass.
And 4 of their children.
Don't know what the story is with 5 of them, assuming they're dead.
Have stood outside their home, watching their home burn to the ground, with 5 of their children presumably still in there, helplessly, unable to go in and get those children out.
And it was still hours and later before the fire department were even able to get there.
But apparently going in and checking properly to find their bodies to give some closure isn't important enough because it's Christmas.
But yes, the fire marshal had told the Sodders to leave the site as it was and that the authorities would come back and finish inspecting things later. So, despite the fire marshal telling the family to leave the site as it was, less than a week later George Sodder bulldozed 4 to 5 feet of dirt onto what was left of their home, where the family intended to plant flowers as a shrine to their lost children.
It was their way of coping.
Exactly.
Yep.
Everyone deals with shit differently.
Exactly.
And the local coroner held an inquest the following day and concluded that the 5 children had perished in the fire, despite no human remains being found. It was believed that the fire had been hot enough to cremate the bodies completely and was caused by faulty wiring, ruling the fire as accidental. We'll don't worry, we'll touch back on that.
I wish we were like video recordings. People could see my fucking face right now.
Yeah, I feel like some of the faces we make would be quite comical. They could go on shirts.
It's just
Anyhow,
me, like...
by the 30th of December, death certificates for the 5 Sodder children had been filed at the Fayette County Courthouse, listing the causes of death as either fire or suffocation. Now, obviously, questions. In the following days, questions arose. The Sodders had trouble accepting the belief of Chief Morris and the coroner's inquest that all traces of the children's bodies had been completely cremated in the fire, because multiple household appliances and bits of tin roof had been found and were still recognisable in the ash. So Jennie compared the results of the fire to a newspaper account of a similar house fire that had happened at around the same time and had killed a family of 7, but in that instance skeletal remains of all of the victims are reported found.
And I have looked it up because I wanted to make sure I'm not spreading misinformation, but human teeth are considered basically indestructible. So even if the fire had been hot enough to burn up the bodies to the point of burning up the bones, their teeth realistically would have still been there. Like,
well, not necessarily, because it's the same with cremation. Your teeth get cremated and everything.
That's because the fire is hot enough. Hang on now.
Oh yeah, but that again, we'll get onto that anyway shortly, because there's the whole part about the heat.
Like a cremation fire is...
Oh, it's actually about... here.
There we go. You
Jennie even burned small piles of animal bones to see if they would be completely cremated, and none of them were. An employee from a local crematorium got in touch with Jennie and told her that human bones remain even after the bodies are burnt at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit or over 1,000 degrees Celsius for 2 hours.
That's insane. Like.
Which is a lot longer and hotter than the Sodder house fire could have been, because it only took 45 minutes for their house to be completely destroyed.
There would have been remains.
So there would have been bones and teeth and everything in between. Yeah. Could the missing Sodder children still be alive? You know, like if there's no remains. A telephone repairman told the Sodders that the house's phone lines had been cut, not burned through in the fire like they had first thought, meaning that someone would have had to climb 14 feet up the pole of the phone line and reach 2 feet away from the pole to cut the line. So like someone went out of their way.
Like someone had intentions.
You know, they were like, They really like exerted themselves to do that. Neighbours had seen a man stealing block and tackle from the property around the time of the fire, and he was identified and arrested. The man admitted to cutting the phone line, but he claimed that he thought it was a power line, and he denied having any involvement in the fire. However, but like, why did you want to cut it, whether it's a phone line or a fire line?
Why are you cutting power line?
Fire line. A power line. However, there is no record identifying the suspect and why he wanted to cut any utility lines to the Sodder house while he was stealing from there. Jennie later said that if the power lines had been cut, none of them would have been able to make it out of the house.
Yeah.
You know. The missing ladder that George always had propped up against the house was found over 75 feet away down an embankment. So, again, weird. Very
weird, because it's not like George or any of his kids would have taken the ladder away from the house and thrown it down an embankment.
75 feet away as well. Like.
Exactly.
George's coal trucks not having started was also considered a bit strange. George believed that someone had tampered with them, possibly the man who was stealing and cut the phone line.
Especially when both of them didn't start.
I didn't put it into my research, but I remember coming across something that, you know, out of the heat and the moment and the stress, maybe when they were trying to start it, what's that thing where you rush too much fuel into something and it won't start?
You flood the engine.
That's it. Like there is people that said, okay, maybe in the panic of it trying to start the car, he flooded the engine.
But both of them.
Yeah,
because
what are the odds?
This is just my personal
It's possible,
opinion.
but I don't think it'd manage a boat.
I think if I was in that situation and I got into the first truck and I tried to start it and it didn't start, I think I would try to be a lot more careful. But then obviously I've never been in this. I never hoped to be in the situation. Yeah. I've never been in the situation. I can't tell you what state of mind this man had and whether he was able to calm himself enough to think logically and be like, right, try and be more careful starting this one. But also I'm sure, like, I think if you flood the engine, the car would make some kind of noise, or you would get some kind of...
Well, I don't know, because the car could have made noise. It's just not publicised.
Okay,
I just know that they wouldn't start. Like, they wouldn't start, could have been... and not turning on.
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah, so that I read that somewhere. But again, you know, could have been at play, but it still doesn't explain why the ladder wasn't there, why this fella felt the need to cut phone or lines or
like,
power lines.
There's a lot in this case that's just very odd.
Yeah. And now, in terms of the woman who had called the Sodder house that night, she was not connected to the fire. When she was located, she confirmed that she genuinely had just called the wrong number.
Wrong number.
Do you know, it was obviously, I suppose, laughter, clinking. She was probably drinking, do you know, out with friends or something.
Trying to get onto someone like, oh, Josh, why aren't you in the pub?
You know, something like that. Yeah. So that could be harmless. Could be related to check if they were home, but it did seem to have been shown that in the clear.
Yeah.
Now, as spring approached, the family planted the flowers, as they had said they would, in the soil that George had bulldozed over the remains of the house. Jennie took care of the memorial for the rest of her life.
That's so sad.
Now, I don't actually think the memorial is still there anymore, I'm not sure. But
that's also so
I think there's a house there now. I think I saw it somewhere, but I don't know. I could be wrong. That's something to check. Evidence came to light to support the Sodders' belief that the fire had been deliberate and was no accident. A bus driver that had been passing through Fayetteville late Christmas Eve of 1945 said that he had seen people throwing balls of fire at the house. Only a few months after this, 2-year-old Sylvia came across a small, hard, dark green rubber ball-like object in a bush once the snow had melted away so that it could be seen. And George, recalling Jennie's account of hearing a loud bang on the roof before the fire,
rolling down.
Yeah, and something rolling, said it looked like a pineapple bomb, type of hand grenade or some other combustible device.
Yeah, because I was thinking like maybe someone was throwing like Molotov cocktails at the house or something, but I suppose that would have smashed.
Exactly, they wouldn't have rolled.
Yeah.
The family later believed, despite the fire marshal's conclusion, that the fire had actually started on the roof. However, there was no way to prove it by this time, obviously.
Everything was gone.
And
I suppose forensics, even for fires, wouldn't be what they are
No, exactly. And like, how can you check if it was the roof when everything's ash?
Yeah, exactly. The roof is gone.
Now, there are also witnesses who claimed they saw the children. One woman who was watching the fire from the side of the road claimed that she had seen some of the Sodder children peering out of a car that was passing while the house was burning. So, weird. Another woman who worked at a rest stop between Fayetteville and Charleston said that she had served them breakfast the next day and had seen a car with Florida licence plates in the parking lot of the rest stop.
Okay.
So, again, sus.
Very weird.
In 1947, George and Jennie Sodder sent a letter about the case to the FBI and got a reply from J. Edgar Hoover saying, although I would like to be of service, the matter related appears to be of local character and does not come within the investigative jurisdiction of the Bureau. J. Edgar Hoover's agent said they would help if they got permission from the local authorities. However, the Fayetteville Police and Fire Departments declined the offer.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Like, why would you decline any extra help, like? But anyway, ego, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Or other things.
Don't want to...
Either ego or conspiracy.
Yeah, don't want to be proved that they're wrong about something.
Seeing as the Sodders had so many questions and were not inclined to believe the official rulings regarding the fire, they hired C.C. Tinsley, a private investigator from the nearby town of Gawley Bridge, isn't it?
C.C. Tinsley.
Tinsley found out, remember the coroner's jury?
Yeah.
Tinsley found out that one of the jurors on the coroner's jury that ruled the fire an accident was none other than the life insurance salesman that had threatened them with fire over a year before.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, a year before over George's comments on Mussolini. He was one of the jurors on the coroner's jury.
Did they not do that? What's that thing? You know that thing that they do before you're actually accepted onto the jury to make sure there's no conflict of interest?
I don't know, but I suppose maybe when it's to a coroner and it's a death report and it's not a crime, it's probably not like guilty, not guilty. It's just what happened here.
Definitely
it's more investigative.
Definitely something they should have implemented.
Yeah.
I hope they implemented it after this because that is wild to me.
Yeah, but I feel like it's much easier to background check people now anyway.
Yeah, it is.
So, but yes, so he was on the jury of that. Tinsley also heard that there were rumours that even though the Sodders had been told by Fire Chief Morris that no remains were found in the ashes, Fire Chief Morris had apparently found a heart and had later put it into a metal box and secretly buried it.
No.
Tinsley convinced Chief Morris why do I have a speech impediment all of a sudden? Well, actually I do have a lisp sometimes.
Yeah, it's fine. Chief Morris.
Tinsley convinced Chief Morris to show them where he buried it, and they dug up the box. They immediately brought it to a local funeral director, who examined the apparent heart and concluded that it was a beef liver untouched by the fire. Untouched.
Because I was thinking a heart wouldn't have survived the fire.
Later, there were rumours that Chief Morris had admitted that the box had not come from the fire and that he had put it there in the hopes that the Sodders would find it and believe the missing children had all died in the fire.
What the fuck, man? Why are you trying to impede the investigation?
Over the next few years, tips and leads continued to come. George saw a newspaper photo of school children in New York City, and he was certain that one of them was his daughter, Betty. In search of the child, George drove to Manhattan, but the parents of the child refused to speak with him. I think that's I get it if there's but if they've told you what has happened, would you not speak to them and just give them that closure? I'm sorry, but it's not your child. It is our
child. Yeah.
I can see why they'd reject, but I can also not see it at the same time. I've got conflicting arguments in my brain.
Yeah, because on the one hand you're like, would they not, as parents, try and give a bit of closure? But on the other hand, you're like, okay, maybe he's like a crazy person and they wanted to keep their child safe. And
so I can see it from both sides of okay, maybe it's a bit sus they won't talk to him, but I can also see 100% why they wouldn't want to at the same time.
Yeah.
They don't want to be involved in this,
in
what they could see as craziness.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It is, yeah. If I take a shot for every time I say yeah.
Yeah. In August of 1949, George convinced Oscar Hunter, a Washington, D.C. pathologist, to supervise a new search through the dirt at the site of the house. After conducting a comprehensive search, items are found, such as a dictionary that belonged to the children, as well as some coins. Also found were several small bone fragments, which were sent to Marshall T. Newman, a specialist at the Smithsonian Institution.
Yeah.
The report issued on these bones was the following. The human bones consist of 4 lumbar vertebrae belonging to one individual. Since the transverse recesses are fused, the age of this individual at death should have been 16 or 17 years. The top limit of age should have been about 22, since the centra, which normally fuses at 23, were still unfused. On this basis, the bones show greater skeletal maturation than what would be expected for a 14-year-old boy, the oldest missing Sodder child. It is, however, possible, although not probable, for a boy 14 and a half years old to show 16 to 17 maturation. So I don't believe that to be anything to do with them.
No, but where did those bones come from? If
There's,
it's not...
Did I put something in? I think I did.
Because I want to know.
Oh, and Marshall also said that the bones showed no signs of being exposed to fire.
Okay, so they were obviously placed there.
The report also said it is very strange that no other bones were found in the allegedly careful excavation of the basement of the house. Considering that the house reportedly only burned for up to 45 minutes, the report also said one would expect to find the full skeletons of the 5 children rather than only 4 vertebrae.
From not matching the ages of the missing children.
Exactly. So,
it was the younger kids. Not
yeah,
all
like
of
the oldest kids. Was 14.
The oldest of the missing kids was 14,
yeah.
The
report determined that the bones are most likely in the supply of dirt that George had used to fill the basement to create the memorial. Right, so they were God knows where they came from. There was one report that said the dirt could have came from a graveyard area.
Okay, maybe
but I didn't put that in because I couldn't find a good resource to back that up. But that would explain the bones.
Okay.
The Smithsonian report gave rise to 2 hearings at the Capitol in Charleston. After the hearings, Governor O.K.L. Patterson and State Police Superintendent W.E. Burchett told the Sodders that their search was hopeless and closed the case at a state level.
Fuck off.
How nice, like.
How dare they?
So
like,
rude.
This family is missing 5 of their children.
And I don't believe they died in that fire.
5 of their children. I don't either, but that's besides the point that I'm making. 5 of their kids. And to be told your search is hopeless. Like, that is disgusting behaviour.
Imagine, like...
That.
Yeah, fair enough. Spoiling. There's ways to say that in a much nicer way
than just saying it's hopeless.
But
have a bit of fucking compassion.
Respect and compassion. Be
You're
a human.
Very close to my car. Anytime someone reverses out while we're recording, I watch them like a hawk, but he was very close to my car.
Anxiety. So the Sodders obviously didn't give up.
Of course.
George and Jennie put up a billboard along Route 16 and also gave out flyers offering a $5,000 reward for information leading to the recovery of their children. George and Jennie soon increased the reward offer to $10,000.
Which I'm sure would have been a lot of money back then as well.
Oh,
compared
definitely.
to now with inflation and everything like.
They received a letter from a woman in St. Louis saying that Martha, the oldest girl, was in a convent there. They received another tip from Texas where a customer in a bar had overheard an incriminating conversation about a Christmas Eve fire in West Virginia. A person in Florida had claimed the children were staying with a distant relative of Jennie. George travelled the country to investigate each of the leads they got, but unfortunately he always returned home with no answers.
That is heartbreaking.
I hope this rain don't get too loud again.
Yeah.
More than 20 years after the fire in 1968, Jennie went to get the mail and there was an envelope addressed only to her.
Yes, I know about this.
The envelope was postmarked in Kentucky, but it had no return address. Inside was a photo of a man in his mid-20s, and on the back of it was a cryptic note that was handwritten. The note read, Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie. What is my computer doing? Please don't die.
Is it still recording?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay.
It's just minimised it.
Okay.
Where'd it go, though? Oh, it's there. Hi, guys. We're still here. I love brother Frankie. LLIL boys A90132 or 35. And that was what was wrote on the back.
Okay.
Jennie and George could not deny the resemblance in the photo of this older man in his 20s. I saw it as well. I see it.
Now, like, usually with something like that, I take it with a grain of salt, and I'm like, but it's
there.
Eerie how similar this photo of, like, supposed Louis looks to photos of actual Louis when he's young.
Yeah.
Like, the resemblance is uncanny. We'd have to put it on the Instagram.
Yeah, I'll put the photo comparisons up. So they couldn't deny the resemblance to their Louis, who was 9 at the time of the fire.
And would have been in his mid-20s at the time.
Yeah, and apart from obvious similarities, dark curly hair, dark brown eyes, they also had the same straight, strong nose and the same upward tilt of the left eyebrow.
I was going to say the eyebrows as well. Yeah,
very. George and Jennie, this is what I find really weird.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard this part. George and Jennie hired a private investigator once again, and they sent him to Kentucky. Never heard from him again. They sent him to go looking into that envelope, and
he never returned.
So whether he took off with the money, or whether something weird happened and he found something and was killed or threatened.
Yeah.
But he went off and was never heard from again. The Sodders worried that if they published the note or name of the town on the postmark that their son could be harmed if it was him.
Of course.
They updated the billboard to include the updated photo of Louis and hung an enlarged version over their fireplace. George said in an interview, "Time is running out for us, but we only want to know if they did die in that fire. We want to be convinced. Otherwise, we want to know what happened to them."
They just want closure.
Yeah. George died a year later in August 1969, still having had hoped for a break in the case. Jennie put up a fence around her property and began to add rooms to her home as if building layers between her and the outside. Since the fire, Jennie had only worn black as a sign of mourning for her lost children, whether they were indeed dead or missing, and continued to do so until she passed away in February of 1989. The now weathered billboard was taken down by the surviving Sodder children, and their own children continued publicising the case and investigating leads. Sylvia, the youngest of the Sodder children, passed away in April of 2021 at the age of 79. Sylvia did not believe that her siblings had died in that fire. Whether the missing siblings died in the fire that night or survived, they are likely no longer missing but also deceased by now, even if from nothing but age.
The age, yeah.
There are so many unanswered questions and strange things surrounding the case, and it truly does remain not only an unsolved tragedy but an unsolved mystery.
Like, this case is one that has stuck with me for quite a few years now. I think it was Eleanor Neal did a video on it, and that's how I saw it. It was either Eleanor Neal, Bella Fiore, or
one of our main Gs.
Bailey Sarrion. They were like my main three for years, and then I added in a couple of others. But
that's the case.
It's just such a bizarre case. Like, I do not believe for a second
they weren't in that fire
that
as far as I'm concerned.
They were in that house when it caught fire. The fact that
there's theories and everything out there too with the Italian mob and everything.
Like, I know Jennie woke up and the front door was unlocked.
So
it is possible they were already out of the house when she woke up.
Yeah.
I don't think that they were.
Because when she woke up to answer the phone, that was before the time where she woke up to the bang on the roof.
Yeah.
So someone could have come in, taken 5 of them or lured 5 of them away or whatever, and then run the fire.
I personally think someone was watching the house waiting for the lights to go out. But at the same time, I'm like, how did they get the kids out of the house if the door was locked? Because Jennie locked the door when she went downstairs that time. But
they could have got the kids out of the house before she locked the door.
And then waited.
Because she was already in bed asleep and woke up to the phone ringing.
Everyone was asleep.
Yeah.
And then came back to set the fire or something. But I don't know. What was the time frame? Do you know between her going? What was it again?
It was around 10. It was around 10 p.m. when they asked could they stay up longer, and then she picked up Sylvia and went to bed. And the phone call wasn't until 12:30.
12:30, and then
or 12:30 anyway.
What time was it again when she woke up to the
about 1:30.
Okay, so there was like an hour between her waking up to find the door unlocked and her waking up to the bang.
But there was also roughly 2 hours before that she was already asleep before the phone rang.
Yes, of course, yeah.
So they could have been gone between then because she didn't check bedroom. She just saw on the couch, locked the door, closed the blinds, went to bed. So they could have been gone any time after she went to bed at 10 o'clock.
True. It's just, it's a wild one. Like, it's something that I can't suss out. I can't figure it out. And, like, I would love to know the answers. I would love, I'm sure the family would have loved it a lot more.
But I suppose at this stage, with the fact that all of the children being passed away, obviously there's still grandchildren alive and the children of the children. But, I think it'd be a lot harder now that a lot of the ones that would have been there that night would be passed away by now. I
do think it's one of those cases that will eventually be solved by genealogy.
Maybe.
Just based on if
any of the ones that were supposedly have been in that fire had children.
Yeah, but then obviously if they didn't have children, but I think the chances of that are quite slim.
So
like at least one of them had to have had at least one child.
But it depends where they were brought, like, because if they were brought somewhere where they had some sort of their own will, why didn't they go home?
True. Yeah, that's true actually.
Or why didn't they get in touch?
They would have eventually got in contact. Like, I know there was letters sent and things, but if they gained any bit of freedom from their presumed captors.
And surely the captors would die before them, unless it was a big mob or a big ring or something like that, where one person dies, throne's passed on to someone else, and it's never ending. So you're always making sure you do what you need to do to stay alive and do what you need to do to keep your family members who think you're dead or missing alive.
Like, it's a baffling case.
And then the fact that investigator went off to look where that postmark thing was and never came back. Now, don't get me wrong, they could have just taken off with the money and being an awful human being.
Or even,
but they could have,
if there was ever, happened. Like, if any of them were ever at any point murdered or anything and there was no, like, they were listed as a John Doe or a Jane Doe and their DNA was taken,
something would have shown up.
Maybe something will show up eventually, but I don't know, it's just, it's such a crazy case.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many theories on it, but I just don't believe they were in the fire because I think something of them would have been found.
Yeah, but then I'm also like, how do you quietly abduct 5 children?
5 children. Without,
oldest one being 14.
And Marion being asleep on the couch would have seen or heard something or woken up if they were, I don't know, it's wild. It's fucking crazy.
It's very confusing.
Unless they were all made to climb out the window and that's why the ladder was so far away, but like, how would you get them all to climb out the window without making some kind of noise?
Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Like, someone would have heard something.
Yeah, surely.
The other brothers
it's not like,
in the room next door.
Like, there was 4 other children in the house.
Yeah.
And George and Jennie Sodder.
Mm-hmm. And was it 2 or 3 of the older boys were in the bedroom right next door, so they would have heard something.
Yeah, like, I think they were... Like, I don't know whether there was, like, the attic was broken into 2 or whether you should come down the stairs and in the room beside there was where they'd shout into.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm going to leave it there because I'm worried I'm worried the laptop's going to die and it's going to lose stuff. So... Yeah, if you have any theories or you see anything interesting about it, let us know.
I want to hear all the theories.
Yeah,
this one just
mind-boggling.
Gets the brain going. It's an awful, awful case. My heart absolutely breaks for the family. I can't imagine what they went through. Like, obviously my heart breaks for all the cases we cover.
Of course.
Like, every single
one. But there's not one ounce of an answer to this one.
There's nothing. Nothing, and for them to be told.
Yeah, but like when you think of it, in 23 years, it'll be 100 years since it happened.
Oh my god, that's mad.
So like it's already 70-something years. Because, Sylvia died at what? Was she 70-something?
She was 79, I think you said.
I think
in 2021.
Was she younger than that? I thought I said. But anyway, she was in her 70s anyway.
In 2021,
and that was 2021, and she was 3 at the time, or was she 2? She was 2 at the time.
God, like, it's just.
But yeah.
Awful, 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 awful. Merry Christmas.
But yeah, with that, have a great Christmas. Hug your family.
Plug out your Christmas tree lights.
Yeah, please. And that's that.
So yeah.
We will see you again next week for Tanya's New Year special.
I don't know what I'm doing yet, so that'll be interesting.
It'll be quelle surprise.
But at least my laptop's working now.
Yes, this is the main thing. Okay. Thanks for listening, guys.
Merry Christmas.
Leave us a 5-star review. Follow us on Instagram. Find us on Facebook. The usual shenanigans.
We love ya.
And loads of love. Have a great Christmas. And next episode isn't coming out until the 2nd of January, so Happy New Year in advance, but we'll say Happy New Year then too.
Of course.
Ciao.
Bye.